Hello, everyone. Today we're going to talk about 5 habits that, no exaggeration, can actually change your entire life. Now, picture this. It's still dark outside. Your phone alarm is chirping something between a warble and a threat, and the world is quiet. Most people are still dreaming. But you're about to wake up on purpose. You probably won't survive the next decade if you keep hitting snooze on more than just your alarm. And no, I don't mean physically. I mean the version of you who actually wants to live a better, deeper, more intentional life. That version, it's dying every time you ignore that whisper of motivation. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Also, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is right now. I always love seeing how far this cozy corner of the internet reaches. Now, let's get comfortable, and let's get started today. The first habit that cracked my world wide open was waking up earlier. Not just getting out of bed, I mean waking up on purpose. There's a difference between being awake and being alive at 5:30 in the morning. It didn't start heroic. In fact, it started with resentment. I had a roommate in college who was an early riser. She'd get up with the birds. Literally, she had this outdoor yoga thing going on with a Bluetooth speaker and a mat she washed more than her bed sheets. I hated her energy, but secretly, I hated that I didn't have it. So I tried it. Just once. Set an alarm for 6 a.m. and fully expected to roll back into bed. But instead of the crushing wall of fatigue I expected, something weird happened. The air felt cleaner. The apartment was mine. I made coffee without anyone judging me for how much cream I use, and I sat down at the window. That window overlooked absolutely nothing. But somehow, it felt like the whole world. There's a reason people say the early bird gets the worm. Although, technically, night owls eat just fine too. But psychologically, morning hours are precious. According to neuroscience, your brain is in a theta-alpha wave crossover state early in the morning, especially within the first 30 minutes of waking up. That's the perfect state for creativity, decision-making, and planning. Odd fact, Thomas Edison believed sleep was a waste of time. He used to nap with metal balls in his hand, so that when he drifted too far into real sleep and dropped them, the noise would wake him up. That's dedication or madness, depending on the lighting. But waking early isn't about punishing yourself with the dark. It's about reclaiming hours that no one else is using. I started by doing nothing except sitting in silence. That silence turned into journaling. That journaling turned into setting a goal. And that goal turned into this voice you're hearing now. Early mornings taught me the art of momentum. The thing is, when you wake up late, you're playing catch-up all day. The messages have already started. Your boss is already online. Your cat is screaming for breakfast like she pays rent. You're reacting. But when you wake up early, you're ahead. You're moving before the world throws its chaos at you. That psychological head start? It's intoxicating. And don't get me wrong, I still love sleep. I love it like I love chocolate. Responsibly, but with deep appreciation. But I also love who I become when I trade a little bit of sleep for a whole lot of clarity. And here's the sneaky academic debate. Is waking up early biologically better, or is it just a byproduct of capitalist productivity worship? Honestly, both arguments have teeth. There's genetic evidence that chronotypes, whether you're a night owl or early bird, are real and hereditary. But I'd argue that intention overrides nature more often than we think. Waking up early helped me stop defaulting through life. You know that hazy, gray autopilot that sets in when you're just reacting to notifications and coffee spills? Yeah, that one. It started fading. Now don't get me wrong. I still have days where I oversleep, wake up confused about what year it is, and stumble into the kitchen like a half-baked zombie. But I notice it now. And that awareness? That's everything. You can't change what you don't notice. Let me give you a morning from last week. Alarm went off at 5:45. I rolled out of bed like a reluctant burrito. I made warm lemon water, which I used to think was Instagram nonsense until I actually tried it. It works. It really clears your throat and your attitude. Then I lit a candle. Not for romance. Just ambience. Then I opened my notebook and wrote 3 things. 1. What I wanted today to feel like. 2. What I was afraid of. 3. What I could control. That's it. 15 minutes. But it changed my posture. My breath. My grip on the day. Here's a quote I scribbled that morning from a neuroscientist. You decide your brain's chemistry in the first 10 minutes of your day. 10 minutes. That's all it takes to either fire up your dopamine and focus circuits, or drown in cortisol and dread. And if you're sitting there thinking, well, I can't wake up early, I have night shifts, kids, or a screaming rooster who doesn't believe in peace, don't stress. It's not about when you wake up. It's about waking up on purpose. Even if your morning is 1 p.m., do it intentionally. Put a ritual around it. Light a candle, play a song, stretch your arms like you're trying to hug the future. This habit doesn't guarantee that you'll become a millionaire or suddenly enjoy folding laundry. But it will give you one gift that's rarer than diamonds: presence. And if you ask me, that's the beginning of everything. The second habit that changed me forever was setting intentional goals, and not just scribbling down vague wishes like get rich or be happy. I mean real, thought-out, sweat-inducing goals with teeth. There was a time in my life when I lived on autopilot. I'd wake up, shuffle through the day, scroll social media like it owed me answers, and then feel vaguely unsatisfied by bedtime. I wasn't unhappy. I just wasn't anything. And that's when it hit me. I didn't know what I was aiming for. A ship without a compass doesn't just drift, it sinks. So I started writing goals. Not resolutions. Not bucket lists. Goals. The kind that force you to look yourself in the eye and ask, are you doing this because you care or because you're bored? Here's how it started. I gave myself one notebook. Just one. No fancy apps, no spreadsheets, just pen and paper. And I split it into 4 parts: career, health, relationships, and self-worth. I wrote one goal in each. No more. No less. It looked like this. Career. Make a living doing something I would do for free. Health. Feel strong in my body. No crash diets allowed. Relationships. Call my parents without needing a reason. Self-worth. Speak to myself like I would to a best friend. That notebook became my compass. I kept it under my pillow like some kind of emotional security blanket. Because let's be real, when you don't know what you want, everyone else will decide for you. Your boss, your feed, your fears. And I'll tell you something that might sound weird. Setting goals made time move differently. Like, really differently. Suddenly, every hour felt like it meant something. I'd wake up and know what direction to tilt my energy. It's like GPS for the soul. There's something called implementation intention in psychology. It's the idea that we're more likely to follow through on something when we specify exactly what we'll do and when we'll do it. For example, instead of I'll work out tomorrow, you write, I'll do a 30-minute bodyweight workout at 7 a.m. in my living room. That specificity makes your brain stop waffling and start acting. Now, weird tangent. Did you know squirrels forget where they bury about 74% of their nuts? That's a real stat. But the forgotten ones grow into trees, which kind of makes squirrels accidental forest farmers. There's a lesson in that. Honestly, most of our actions will outgrow us if we stay consistent. Back to goals. I learned to break them down, make them stupidly simple. Want to write a book? The real goal becomes, write 200 words every weekday before checking my phone. That's it. The rest takes care of itself. The truth is, your goals have to matter to you. Not to Instagram. Not to your ex. Not to that high school rival who still floods your feed with gym selfies and hashtags like hashtag no pay no pizza. Ask yourself, would I still want this if no one ever found out I achieved it? That's your truth. And here comes the juicy academic debate. Do goals actually make people happier, or do they just create a permanent state of yearning? Some psychologists argue that constantly chasing goals keeps you in a loop of dissatisfaction. But others say the pursuit itself gives life meaning. Personally, I think the answer is both, and it depends on your why. Let me take you into a moment. A few years ago, I set a weird goal: to go 30 days without complaining. Not silently, at all. No groaning about weather. No sarcasm about traffic. No whining about grocery lines. I kept a tally mark every time I slipped. Day 1, 13 tallies. Day 10, 2. By the end, I was so annoyingly optimistic even my plants started thriving. That goal rewired my brain. And I know, it sounds trivial, but goals like that shift your entire filter on life. You stop asking, what's wrong today, and start asking, what's one thing I can control? Also, don't fall into the trap of chasing only productive goals. Set joyful ones, too. Learn how to juggle. Make the perfect grilled cheese. Memorize the opening monologue from your favorite TV show just to flex. One time, I set a goal to master the art of sleeping anywhere, anytime. Planes, park benches, the floor of my friend's garage during a New Year's Eve party. I nailed it. That goal didn't make me rich or wise, but it made me hilarious to travel with. Some goals are for survival, some are for sanity, and some are just for the plot. Oh, and one more thing. Don't fall into the "if I miss a day, I failed" mindset. Goals are paths, not prison sentences. Life will interrupt. Dogs will vomit. Wi-Fi will die. Let it happen. Pick up where you left off like nothing happened, because nothing did. I keep my goals visible now. I write them on sticky notes. I whisper them in the mirror. I text them to friends who will actually hold me accountable. And when I complete one, I don't move on right away. I celebrate. With cake. Or naps. Or cake naps. Whatever works. Because goals aren't just about what you get. They're about who you become on the way. And that version of you? They're worth writing down for. If you had asked me a few years ago what self-care meant, I probably would have rattled off something about bubble baths and overpriced face masks. And don't get me wrong, both are fantastic. But the third habit that changed me forever wasn't skincare or cucumber water. It was learning to prioritize self-care without feeling guilty about it. Let me paint a picture. I was that person who said yes to everything. Helping a friend move on a work night? Yes. Volunteering for that extra shift when I was already sick? Absolutely. Responding to emails at midnight with one eye open? Of course, because I thought that made me dependable. But let's be honest, I was running on fumes and calling it ambition. Then came the crash. The flu, actually, but it felt like a cosmic slap. I couldn't get out of bed for 4 days, and not once during that time did I think, I'm glad I helped everyone else instead of sleeping. All I could think was, why did I let it get this far? So I started redefining self-care. It wasn't about indulgence. It was about sustainability. It was treating myself like someone worth preserving, not someone to be constantly exhausted for other people's convenience. One small thing I changed. Drinking water first thing in the morning. Sounds ridiculously simple, right? But for months, I would wake up and go straight to caffeine. Coffee before water, and suddenly I'd wonder why my brain felt like static. That one shift, water first, felt like a tiny act of self-respect. And I realized self-care isn't just about what you do. It's about how you talk to yourself while doing it. Do you feel guilty for resting? Do you label breaks as laziness? Because I did. I once felt ashamed for taking a nap after a long week of nonstop work. My inner monologue was like a very mean life coach in a bad suit. Self-care became the moment I fired that voice. In the West, though, we often tie our worth to productivity. The hustle culture aesthetic, espresso shots, all-nighters, 5 a.m. grind sets, makes burnout look glamorous. But being exhausted isn't a badge of honor. It's a warning light. Self-care, for me, started with time audits. I tracked how I was actually spending my hours each day. The results? Horrifying. A mix of stress scrolling, mental multitasking, and pretending to be just fine. I was giving my energy to everyone but myself. So I built a new routine. Nothing revolutionary. Just better choices, made repeatedly. I added 10 minutes of stretching after my shower. I deleted work email off my phone on weekends. I created a playlist called Human Mode that I play when I need to slow down. First track, Billie Holiday. No regrets. What most people don't tell you about self-care is this. It's not always soothing or indulgent. Sometimes it means checking your finances, even when opening your banking app feels like a horror movie. Sometimes it's forcing down vegetables when your whole being craves mac and cheese. Sometimes it's turning down a night out because protecting your peace outweighs the fear of missing out. And yes, there's academic debate here, too. Some researchers argue that self-care culture has become commodified, packaged into spa days and $40 candles that tell you to breathe deeply. But the counterpoint is compelling. Those tiny rituals, even when commercialized, remind people to pause and check in with themselves. Even if you bought your mindfulness on sale, it still counts. I remember one night, after a brutal week, I lit a candle, turned off every screen, and just breathed for 15 minutes. No agenda, no productivity hacks, just stillness. I hadn't done that since ever, and in that silence, something shifted. My anxiety wasn't gone, but it was quieter, like turning the volume down on chaos. Here's what self-care taught me. You can't pour from an empty cup, but you also shouldn't pour everything out, even when your cup is full. Save some for you. You deserve to sip from your own joy, not just serve others theirs. Now, let me walk you through a recent Sunday morning. I woke up without an alarm. I made tea slowly, like ceremonially slowly. I put on a fuzzy sweater that had no business being that soft. I didn't check my phone. I sat by the window and just looked. At the sky. At a bird doing some dramatic one-legged thing on the balcony railing. At nothing in particular. That moment. That was medicine. And don't let anyone shame you for what fills your soul. If it's puzzles, do puzzles. If it's long showers while pretending you're in a sad music video, go for it. If it's saying no to a toxic friend, say it twice. Self-care doesn't have to be aesthetic. It has to be honest. One final note. Don't wait until you burn out to care for yourself. Think of self-care like brushing your teeth. Do it daily, even when you're not in crisis, so you don't end up needing an emergency root canal for your life. Take the nap. Set the boundary. Drink the water. Take the long way home if you need the extra silence. Because you matter, even when you're tired. Especially when you're tired. Gratitude was never something I practiced intentionally. It always sounded like something people said during Thanksgiving when they ran out of conversation topics, or when someone's Instagram caption needed a little extra sparkle. But the fourth habit that changed me was practicing gratitude daily, and not just on the good days. Let me be clear. I wasn't always a grateful person. In fact, I used to treat gratitude like a seasoning. Sprinkle a little on top of a good day, but don't expect it to make a bland one taste any better. But one afternoon, standing in line at the DMV with a dead phone and a dying will to live, I met a man who shifted something in me. He was probably in his 70s, wearing a hat that said Vietnam Vet, and humming a song I couldn't place. I was irritated, tapping my foot, thinking about the 67 things I should be doing instead of waiting under fluorescent lights. Then he turned to me and said, "You know, I'm just glad I get to be here today. Beats the alternative." I blinked. He's grateful for the DMV? Turns out, he'd just gotten out of the hospital. Double pneumonia. Said he never appreciated standing until he couldn't do it without coughing up a lung. Said he thanks the floor now when he walks on it. That night, I wrote down one thing I was grateful for. Just one. My pillow. It was lumpy, yes, but it had held my head through some very questionable decisions. And that was the beginning. Within 2 weeks, I had a list. Little things. A song I hadn't heard in years. The barista who remembered my name. The weirdly perfect temperature of my shower. Not life-changing stuff, life-revealing stuff. Things I'd stopped noticing because life got too noisy. There's this concept in psychology called hedonic adaptation. It means we get used to good things. The raise. The relationship. The car that once smelled like ambition, but now just smells like fries. Gratitude is how we fight that numbness. It's a reset button for joy. Weird science fact? Grateful people actually sleep better. A study found that people who kept a gratitude journal slept longer and reported better quality rest. Apparently, going to bed with a thankful brain is like tucking yourself in with a warm blanket of peace. Not an actual blanket, though I do recommend weighted ones. They feel like a polite bear hug. At first, I thought gratitude had to be deep or profound. I'm thankful for the resilience of the human spirit, or something you'd write on a yoga retreat feedback form. But no, it can be, I'm grateful that my avocado was ripe today and not tomorrow when I'll forget it exists. I started turning those tiny moments into a morning ritual. Wake up, breathe, list 3 things I'm grateful for. No repeats allowed. That rule forced my brain to look harder for goodness. And here's the wild part. The more I practiced gratitude, the more I noticed things to be grateful for. It was like adjusting a camera lens. Life didn't change, my focus did. One morning, I found myself being genuinely thankful for traffic. Like, sincerely. I used the extra time to listen to an audiobook that taught me how to say thank you in 17 languages. By the way, in Finnish, it's kiitos, which sounds like an adorable sneeze. And yet, here's where the academic world splits. Some researchers argue that gratitude without action becomes toxic positivity, a way to ignore real problems by forcing fake optimism. Others say gratitude builds resilience, allowing us to face hardship with more courage. Honestly, both have a point. You can't gratitude your way out of a crisis, but you can use gratitude as a flashlight when everything else goes dark. There was a week when everything went sideways for me. Lost a freelance gig. Got ghosted by someone who claimed to love thunderstorms and honest conversations. They lied. Spilled an entire smoothie on my laptop. That night, gratitude felt like a joke. But I forced myself to sit and write. 1. I'm grateful for cloud backups. 2. I'm grateful for lemon-scented disinfectant wipes. 3. I'm grateful I didn't throw my laptop out the window, even though I really wanted to. It wasn't poetic, but it helped. Gratitude isn't just a mental exercise, it's a rewiring tool. Neuroscientists have found that consistently practicing gratitude strengthens the brain's prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for decision-making and emotional regulation. Translation: thankfulness makes you smarter and less likely to yell at your steering wheel. But here's the thing: gratitude is also rebellious. In a world that constantly tells you you're not enough, not fast enough, not rich or thin or viral enough, being grateful says, actually, I'm okay. This moment is enough. And people might not get it. They'll roll their eyes when you say, I'm just really thankful for warm socks and quiet mornings. That's okay. Let them. Gratitude is personal. It's not performative. You don't need to post it, hashtag it, or turn it into a podcast. A few weeks ago, I was walking home in the rain, no umbrella, just vibes, and I started laughing. Like actual laughter. Because the rain was cold, but my coat was warm. My shoes were soaked, but I could feel my feet. And isn't that something? I looked up at the sky and whispered, thank you for reminding me I'm alive. A car splashed me seconds later. Still thankful. A little wetter. A lot more awake. Gratitude doesn't erase pain, but it gives pain a companion. It tells your brain, yes, this is hard, and something beautiful still exists. So try this. Tonight, before bed, write down 3 things. Anything. A soft hoodie. A joke that made you snort. The way your cat blinked at you like you're its emotional support human. Don't overthink it. Just write. And when you wake up tomorrow, notice one more thing. The smell of coffee. The quiet hum of your fridge. The fact that your heart, flawed, tired, still trying, is beating. That's gratitude. That's power. Let me confess something. I used to think lifelong learning was code for people who hoard trivia and dominate bar quizzes. Like, sure, it's cool that you know the capital of Mongolia, but what does that have to do with real life? Then I realized something that flipped my entire worldview. The 5th habit that truly changed me was making a decision to never stop learning. And not just learning facts. I mean actively feeding curiosity, even when no one was assigning homework or giving gold stars. It all started on a Tuesday. I was bored. Not the nothing to do kind of bored. The dangerous kind, where you question your entire existence because you've watched too many crime dramas and now think you can solve your life with a corkboard and red string. I decided, impulsively, to learn how to make bread from scratch. No machine. Just flour, water, salt, and me. Reader, it was a disaster. The dough was clingy, the oven was moody, and I somehow managed to turn my kitchen into a flour crime scene. But I learned. I learned that yeast is alive, that it smells like gym socks before it smells like comfort, and that failure in learning isn't the opposite of progress. It is progress. That was the beginning of my obsession with learning something new every week. Not always big. Some weeks it's a new word in another language. Sometimes it's an explanation of how plane wings work. Spoiler, I still don't fully get it, but I admire the audacity. One week, I learned how to identify the Big Dipper without mistaking it for Orion's belt. Another week, I tried to play the harmonica and mostly made it wheeze like an asthmatic robot. Why does this matter? Because when you keep learning, you stay alive inside. Your brain stays plastic. Neuroplasticity, if we're going full science mode, is your brain's ability to change and adapt like a mental shapeshifter. And the more you challenge your brain, the more adaptable it becomes, especially as you age. That's not just fluff. A 2013 study showed that older adults who learned new skills, like quilting or digital photography, had improved memory and cognitive function. It's like your brain starts doing push-ups the moment it gets a new assignment. I didn't grow up in a family that romanticized curiosity. We weren't anti-learning, but school was just something you did, like brushing your teeth or paying taxes. It wasn't something you embraced for fun. But once I started choosing what I wanted to learn, not what I had to learn, I unlocked this weird, electric joy. And here's the thing, you don't need a classroom. You need Wi-Fi and a will to explore. I've gone down more YouTube rabbit holes than I care to admit. I've learned how to make paper, how to spot a lie based on eye movement, jury's still out, and why flamingos are pink. Spoiler, it's their shrimp-heavy diet. Basically, they're living roes. But here's where the academic world splits hairs. Some say we live in a golden age of information. Others argue we're drowning in low-quality content that gives the illusion of learning without real depth. And yeah, doom scrolling can trick your brain into thinking you're being productive. That's why intention matters. So, I made myself a rule. If I'm going to scroll, I must bookmark one thing to learn deeply. A concept, a skill, a technique. Not just skim and forget, but read and reflect. Sometimes I go old school. Books, actual books. The kind that smell like ideas and paper cuts. Let me walk you through a recent mini-learning adventure. I was at a cafe, heard someone use the phrase moral injury, and I didn't know what it meant. I could have let it go. But I looked it up, read about its psychological implications for healthcare workers, soldiers, and yes, everyday people who compromise their values under pressure. I left that cafe with a better understanding of the human condition and an extra espresso shot. Learning gives your life texture, depth, complexity, but it also gives you options. The more you know, the more pathways open up. You're no longer stuck in one version of yourself. You can pivot, adapt, reroute. Want to switch careers at 45? You've got the learning muscle. Want to impress a room full of toddlers with your dinosaur facts? Boom. You're the cool adult now. Here's a secret. Curiosity is magnetic. People who keep learning radiate this glow of openness. They ask questions instead of making assumptions. They listen more than they lecture. They're the people you want at dinner parties, because they'll actually make the conversation instead of just Instagramming it. I remember a friend once asked, "Don't you get tired of always learning stuff?" And honestly, no. What exhausts me is stagnation. The feeling that nothing's changing, nothing's growing, and I'm just watching life happen to other people. So how do you make it a habit? Here are 3 things that helped me. 1. Set a micro goal. Something like, learn one new thing every day before 10 p.m. That way, you're always on the lookout. 2. Use learning as a break, not a burden. Instead of doom scrolling during lunch, watch a documentary short. Or read an article on something random, like why spiders don't stick to their own webs. Answer, special foot oils. Gross but fascinating. 3. Teach what you learn. Even if it's just retelling it to your cat. Explaining something out loud helps your brain file it under useful instead of temporary trivia. Also, permission granted to not learn everything. You don't have to master French, calculus, and astrophysics by Thursday. Just stay open. Follow your interest. Trust your spark. Because the real joy of learning isn't becoming an expert. It's becoming a beginner again. Over and over. It humbles you. It excites you. It reminds you that your brain is still very much alive. And maybe one day, you'll wake up and realize you've become one of those people who knows the capital of Mongolia. It's Ulaanbaatar, by the way. You're welcome. Failure and I used to have a very dramatic relationship. The kind where one misstep would send me spiraling into an identity crisis, ice cream in hand, wondering if I was doomed to a life of mediocrity. Failure felt final, permanent, a judgment, not an experience. But the 6th habit that changed me, maybe more than any other, was learning to embrace failure as a teacher, not a tyrant. It's easy to talk about failure when it's in the past, neatly wrapped in a story with a moral. But when you're in it, when you've just messed up a job interview, launched a project that flopped, or ended something you swore would last forever, failure doesn't feel like a lesson. It feels like a punch. Let me take you back. I once spent 3 months building an online course. I poured everything into it, videos, worksheets, animations I didn't even know how to animate, but tried anyway. Launch day came, and nothing. 3 people bought it. One of them was my mom. One of them refunded. I cried. Not the cute tear-down-the-cheek kind, but the full, existential, am I even good at anything? Breakdown. I almost deleted everything. I almost gave up entirely. But then I asked the scariest, most transformative question I could think of. What if this isn't the end? What if it's just feedback? It turns out, there's a psychological phenomenon called cognitive reframing. It's where you consciously shift the way you interpret negative events. You can't erase the bad thing, but you can change the story you tell about it. Instead of, I'm terrible at this, it becomes, I'm early in the process. You can know that the inventor of the light bulb, Thomas Edison, made over 1,000 failed attempts before finding the right filament. When asked if he felt like a failure, he reportedly said, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. That's either genius or pure delusion. But it worked. Our culture tends to idolize success stories and skip over the blooper reel. We love hearing about the startup that sold for billions, but not about the 3 that tanked first. We admire the best-selling author, but ignore the pile of rejection letters. Failure gets erased from the highlight reel, which makes us think we're the exception when we stumble. But failure is not the opposite of success. It's the ingredient. In the academic world, there's ongoing debate about whether failure builds character or simply reveals it. Some researchers argue that repeated failure without support can lead to learned helplessness, especially in kids. Others insist that grit and resilience are forged only through struggle. Honestly, I think both are true. Failure without reflection can crush you. But failure with reflection? That's transformation. After my failed course launch, I did something I'd never done before. I conducted a post-mortem. I emailed every person who didn't buy and asked why. The feedback was brutal, but gold. I learned that my landing page was confusing, my pricing made no sense, and, get this, my About Me section felt like it was written by a robot. So I rebuilt it. Smaller, smarter, clearer. And 6 months later, I launched again. This time, 200 people signed up. Same content, just a different me, one who had learned. There's this thing I do now whenever I fail, big or small. I write what I call a failure debrief. It has 3 parts. 1. What happened? Just the facts, no drama. 2. What did I learn? Even if it's don't write emails while hangry. 3. What's the next small action I can take? It takes 10 minutes, but it saves me from falling into the shame spiral. Here's a weirder example. I once tried to learn how to skateboard. Keyword, tried. Within 10 minutes, I fell. On concrete. In front of children. One of them asked if I needed to call an adult. I was the adult. It was humbling. But that moment became a metaphor. Because life is kind of like skateboarding. You only learn balance by moving. Standing still feels safe, but you don't actually get better. You just delay the wobble. Failure doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're experimenting. And experiments are messy by design. There's a scene I love in a show where a character says, you either win or you learn. Not win or lose, win or learn. I started repeating that to myself during hard moments. I didn't lose the job. I learned how to interview better. I didn't lose the friendship. I learned what boundaries I need. I didn't waste time. I gathered data. Here's a personal rule I've adopted. If I'm going to fail, and I will, I want to fail forward. That means stumbling with style, owning it, laughing when possible, adjusting when necessary, and always moving. One time I tripped walking into a building and tried to play it off like I was tying my shoe mid-stride. A woman nearby said, "Smooth recovery." And honestly, that's the energy I try to bring into every failure now. Not denial, not shame, just smooth recovery. Because eventually, failure stops being scary. It becomes familiar, like a weird cousin who always shows up uninvited, but somehow makes you wiser every time they leave. So if you failed recently, or you're in the middle of failing right now, good. That means you tried something. That means you cared enough to risk looking foolish. That means you're in the arena, not on the sidelines. Don't let failure be the end of the story. Let it be a chapter. Better yet, let it be the best chapter. The one where the plot twists and the main character gets gritty and everything starts to change. Because the best things in my life, the most meaningful, the most real, came not in spite of failure, but because of it. Let me be real with you. There was a time in my life when I could find the dark cloud in any silver lining. It was practically a superpower. Something good would happen, and I'd immediately worry about how it might go wrong. Got a promotion? I'll probably mess it up. Someone complimented me? They're probably just being polite. My brain was like a Google search bar for worst-case scenarios. And that's how I learned the 7th habit that would change me forever, cultivating a positive mindset. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about toxic positivity, where everything is sunshine and rainbow farting unicorns. I still get grumpy when I stub my toe or when the Wi-Fi goes out in the middle of something important. But I learned to train my mind to look for what's good, even when it's small, especially when it's hard. This shift didn't come from some Instagram quote over a sunset background. It came from hitting a wall. Emotionally, I mean. I was waking up tired, feeling like my life was a to-do list that never got done. I kept thinking, I'll feel better when I have more money, more friends, more success, more something. Then one day I saw a TED Talk. Yes, I'm that person, and the speaker said, your brain will always find what it's looking for. So train it to look for the good. I paused the video, rewound it, listened again, Could it really be that simple? So I started an experiment. For 30 days, I wrote down one good thing that happened each day. Didn't matter how small. A perfectly ripe banana. A funny typo in a text. A stranger holding the door when I was carrying way too many groceries. At first, it felt forced. Like I was faking joy. But around day 12, something shifted. I wasn't just noticing the good stuff at the end of the day. I was spotting it as it was happening. I laughed more. I worried less. I started giving out compliments like candy. And the wildest part? My life hadn't changed. I had. Your brain has something called the reticular activating system, RAS. It's like a bouncer for your attention. It filters what you notice based on what you believe is important. So if you're constantly expecting disappointment, boom, your RAS highlights every letdown. But if you train your brain to expect beauty, kindness, or connection, that's what it starts to serve up. There's a phrase I use often now, noticing what's working. It's my way of flipping the script when everything feels broken. For example, I had a terrible travel day recently. Delayed flights, rude passengers, a baby screaming like it was auditioning for a horror film. But instead of spiraling, I thought, okay, the coffee at the airport was decent. My headphones didn't die. I got a window seat. That wasn't toxic positivity. That was mental CPR. Here's where the academic debate comes in. Does positive thinking really change outcomes, or does it just change perception? Some researchers argue that mindset shifts don't alter your circumstances, just your reaction to them. Others say positivity can actually increase resilience, performance, and even health outcomes. I say, why not both? Because the truth is, your mindset is your filter, and filters matter. Nobody wants to drink water through a dirty sock. So why view your life through one? A moment that cemented this for me happened during one of those classic, everything went wrong weeks. A friend canceled plans. My rent went up. My bike got stolen. Yes, again. My relationship with bicycles is toxic and ongoing. I wanted to crawl into a blanket burrito and ghost the world. But instead, I did something weird. I wrote a list called The Bright Side. Just as an act of rebellion. The sun still rose. My legs still worked. I had clean sheets and chocolate in the pantry. It didn't solve the week, but it softened the edges. A positive mindset doesn't mean pretending everything's fine. It means giving yourself permission to hope, even when things feel uncertain. It's about shifting from, why is this happening to me, to what could this be teaching me? Now, I use little tricks to keep my mindset in check. Here are a few that actually work. 1. The 5-to-1 rule. For every negative thought I catch, I try to name 5 things I'm grateful for or excited about. 2. Yes, and instead of denying hard feelings, I acknowledge them and look for possibility. Like, yes, I'm anxious, and I know I've gotten through worse. 3. Tiny wins. I celebrate tiny accomplishments. Made the bed? Victory. Drank water before coffee. Champion. Replied to an email I was dreading? Absolute legend. The goal isn't to be fake happy all the time. It's to be resiliently real. To believe that even in the worst moments, something good might still happen. And if it doesn't, you'll survive anyway. I remember this one morning where nothing was going right. I was rushing, spilled tea on my shirt, stepped in something suspiciously wet, and was just done. But then, walking to the train, I saw a little kid in a Spider-Man costume, on a Tuesday. No Halloween. No party. Just pure, chaotic confidence. And I thought, I want that energy. That joy for no reason kind of confidence. So I smiled. Because sometimes the most positive thing you can do is choose to smile, even if it's just at a toddler in a cape. Final thought, your mindset isn't fixed. It's a choice you get to make every day, sometimes multiple times a day. You're allowed to mess up, to have gloomy moments, to cry in the car, and then laugh 5 minutes later because you remembered something dumb your friend said last week. Positivity isn't a destination, it's a direction. One you walk toward, again and again, no matter how many times you trip on the way. And when in doubt, channel your inner Tuesday Spider-Man. There's a secret no one tells you when you're chasing big goals or trying to reinvent yourself. Motivation will betray you. It's flaky. It's moody. It shows up late, leaves early, and sometimes just ghosts you altogether. The 8th habit that changed me forever wasn't finding motivation. It was staying consistent, especially when I didn't feel like it. Let me start with a scene. It's 6:45 a.m. I'm in sweatpants, staring at a yoga mat with deep distrust. I've slept terribly. My body feels like it's been folded by an angry origami artist. And the last thing I want to do is flow with my breath. But I show up. I roll out the mat. I stretch. I don't enjoy it, not really. But afterward, something in me shifts. That's what consistency feels like. Not a highlight reel. Not fireworks. Just doing the thing anyway. See, motivation gets all the attention because it's loud and sexy. It pumps you up with dramatic speeches and high-energy playlists. But consistency? She's quieter, less glamorous. She's the friend who helps you move on a Tuesday. The one who brings soup when you're sick. Boring, but life-changing. I used to think I needed to feel inspired to take action. But it turns out, taking action creates inspiration. Kind of like lighting a fire. Not by waiting for sparks, but by striking the match. There's a psychological concept called the Zeigarnik effect. Our brains are more likely to remember and stay engaged with tasks we've started, not the ones we're still thinking about. That means half the battle is simply beginning. And when you begin over and over, that's consistency. Consistency is how you become the kind of person you admire. You know those people who seem grounded, productive, weirdly serene, even during chaos? It's not magic. It's just repetition, and usually a lot of lists. When I first decided to build better habits, I thought I had to overhaul my whole life. Big mistake. I'd write schedules that looked like military boot camps. Wake up at 4:45. Meditate for 20 minutes. Workout. Journal. Meal prep. Learn Italian. Clean the grout. By day 3, I'd be crying into a bowl of cereal wondering why I even tried. Then I learned about minimum viable effort. The idea is to set the bar laughably low, so low you can't fail. Instead of read for an hour, you commit to 1 page. Instead of run 5 miles, you just lace up your shoes and step outside. Once you start, you usually do more. But even if you don't, you still win. Because you showed up. That changed everything. I started a rule called don't skip twice. Miss a day of journaling? Fine. But never 2 in a row. That tiny rule helped me avoid the all-or-nothing spiral. You know the one, where one missed workout becomes a lost week, and suddenly you're wondering if you even deserve nice things. Yeah, that one. Let's talk about something worth considering. Some experts claim that sticking to a strict routine can actually lead to burnout. It creates pressure and removes spontaneity. But others argue the opposite. That routine is the ultimate form of freedom. It eliminates the stress of constant decision-making and frees up mental energy for creativity. Personally, I believe in the second view. When the basics run on autopilot, your mind is free to chase bigger ideas. Consistency also builds identity. Every time you show up for something, you cast a vote for the kind of person you want to be. Go to the gym? That's a vote for, I'm someone who takes care of my body. Write 1 sentence. A vote for, I'm a writer. Wash the dishes before bed. A vote for, I respect my space. It adds up. And no, consistency doesn't mean doing the same thing every day without fail. Life is chaos. Kids get sick. Jobs get weird. Weather ruins plans. Consistency is about returning, not perfection, but persistence. I keep a little calendar with gold star stickers. Yes, like a kindergarten student. Every day I do the things that matter. Stretching, writing, unplugging. I get a star. It's silly. It's also incredibly effective. My inner 5-year-old is thriving. And on the days I miss, I leave the square blank. No guilt. Just a gentle reminder to try again tomorrow. A quick story. There was a month I tried to write a gratitude entry every single day. And I did. But halfway through, the entries started to change. They went from, I'm grateful for my health, to, I'm grateful that my soup didn't explode in the microwave this time. They got weirder, more specific, but more real. That's what consistency does. It reveals the truth under the surface. One day, I even wrote, I'm grateful for the habit itself. That hit different. Consistency also builds trust in yourself. That's the big one. Every time you follow through, you prove to your brain, I keep promises, even the small ones. And that starts to bleed into every area of life. You stand taller, speak with more clarity, take risks, because you trust that future you can handle the consequences. Final thought, be gentle, but firm. Show up, but don't punish yourself if you stumble. There's this phrase I tell myself when I feel resistance creeping in. You don't have to do it perfectly. You just have to do it again. So if you're waiting for motivation, stop. Just do the thing. Half-heartedly. Lazily, even. Just show up. and show up again and again, because success isn't built on bursts of brilliance. It's built on boring consistency, day after day, breath after breath. Even when your yoga mat looks judgmental. I used to think I could do life solo. You know, lone wolf mode. Hyper-independent. I got this energy. And to be fair, that mindset got me through a lot. Late nights, tight deadlines, emotional breakdowns in grocery store parking lots. But eventually, I realized something was missing. Not just comfort or connection, but something deeper. Belonging. That's when the ninth habit slipped quietly into my life. Building healthy relationships. I don't mean just being friendly. I mean actively curating the people around me. Protecting my energy like it's fine china. Choosing connection not out of obligation, but intention. Because here's the truth. Your relationships shape you more than you think. There's this famous line. You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And while that's a bit simplistic, the core idea is true. You absorb the energy, language, and mindset of your closest circle. If they complain, you'll find yourself griping. If they dream big, you'll start to wonder why you've been playing small. For years, I kept people around out of habit. We had history, sure, but no harmony. It was like clinging to an old hoodie that didn't fit anymore. Comfortable, but kind of sad. Then came a particularly rough season. Job limbo, romantic fallout, and the kind of stress that makes your teeth hurt for no reason. And in that season, I realized something. Some people disappear when your sparkle fades. Others show up with soup and quiet hugs. I started paying attention to who did what. And when we don't nurture them, we pay a price. Studies show that chronic loneliness has the same health risks as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It's not just about being surrounded by people. It's about feeling seen by them. So I made a list. Yeah, a literal list. 2 columns, energizers and drainers. The energizers were the people who made me feel more like myself. The ones I could laugh with at 3 a.m. or sit in silence without feeling awkward. The drainers? Well, you know the type. The ones who always have drama, who talk over you, who leave you emotionally hungover. Then I did the hardest thing. I created boundaries. It started small. I stopped saying yes to every hangout. I muted certain group chats. I stopped over-explaining myself when I needed space. And slowly, life got quieter, but in a good way. Like the noise was finally turned down. And then something amazing happened. I started attracting new kinds of people. People who lifted conversations instead of hijacking them. People who texted just to say, thinking of you. People who celebrated my wins without making it about them. It felt like I was finally breathing fresh air after living in a musty room for too long. Academic sidebar. There's an ongoing debate in sociology. Are strong ties, close friends and family, more important, or are weak ties, casual acquaintances, the real game changers? Some argue that weak ties expose us to new ideas and opportunities, while strong ties offer emotional depth and stability. I say, why not both? A life filled with layers of connection is a rich life. One of the healthiest relationship habits I picked up was what I call micro check-ins. A text, a voice note, a meme that says, "This made me think of you." They take seconds, but carry weight. I stopped waiting for birthdays to reach out. I stopped thinking vulnerability was weakness. If someone mattered to me, I told them. There was a night, not long ago, where I was spiraling about a decision. I texted 3 friends the same message. Do you have 10 minutes to talk? I need help thinking something through. Within 5 minutes, all 3 replied yes. Not advice, not lectures, just presence. That's what healthy relationships give you. Emotional scaffolding. A place to lean when your own bones feel shaky. It's not always dramatic, either. Sometimes it's just sharing popcorn during a terrible movie. Or walking beside someone and realizing you've been matching steps the whole time. Or laughing so hard you snort and they don't even flinch. Relationships also taught me accountability. I started telling people my goals out loud. Scary, I know. But once you say, hey, I'm working on this thing, the right people will remind you, gently, not to quit. Not in a pressure way. In a hey, I believe in you way. And that kind of belief, that's rocket fuel. But let's be honest, not all relationships are meant to last. Some people are chapters, not lifers. I had to grieve a few of those. There was a friend I thought I'd grow old with. We had inside jokes, shared playlists, matching tattoos of very bad ideas. But over time, we grew in different directions. I held on too long. Tried to fix things that didn't want fixing. When I finally let go, it hurt like hell. But also, it made space. And sometimes, that's the most loving thing you can do, make space. Here's my current practice, and maybe it'll help you too. If a relationship feels heavy, I sit with that feeling. I ask, is this heaviness from a rough patch or from a pattern? If someone brings more stress than joy, I take a step back. If I feel like I'm shrinking around someone, I ask why I keep making myself small. And I keep reaching for the people who make me feel bigger, brighter, safer. Last odd moment. I hugged someone recently, and they said, "Wow, I needed that more than I thought." And I smiled because I got it. The right hug from the right person at the right time? That's alchemy. That's healing without a prescription. So here's your nudge. Check on your people. Let them check on you. Build a circle that claps when you win and holds you when you wobble. Say, "I love you" awkwardly. Make the call. Leave the party early if the vibes are off. Send the voice note. And if you're not sure where you stand with someone, ask. Real talk is better than quiet resentment. Because at the end of the day, what shapes us most isn't what we achieve. It's who we walk beside while we're becoming. And if you're lucky, you'll get to be that person for someone else. If you're anything like me, you've probably said yes to way too many things in life, even when your gut was screaming nope. It's a habit that's hard to break, especially in a world where saying no feels like a social crime, or worse, like you're not doing enough. But here's the truth. The 10th habit that changed my life was learning the power of saying no. It sounds simple, right? Just refuse things, and bam, you've got control. But let's be honest, saying no is one of the hardest skills you'll ever learn. And I don't mean the casual no to a second helping of dessert. I mean the tough no to projects, people, or opportunities that, in theory, are great, but aren't the right fit for you. There was a time in my life when I thought every opportunity had to be grabbed. Every request had to be honored. Every favor had to be repaid. If someone asked for my help, it was practically a moral duty to say yes. But here's the catch. When you say yes to everyone else's expectations, you're saying no to your own needs, your own priorities, your own peace. This habit started taking root when I hit a wall. I was juggling too many things: work, personal projects, social obligations, and I felt like I was drowning in good things. I was burnt out, stretched thin, and yet I was still saying yes because I feared disappointing someone or letting an opportunity slip by. But then came a moment, an epiphany, really, when I realized I can't pour from an empty cup. I can't be the best version of myself for anyone if I'm constantly running on fumes. So I did the hardest thing I'd done in a while. I started saying no. At first, it was small. A declined invitation here, a missed event there. But then, it got bigger. I said no to a project I knew wasn't aligned with my values. I said no to friendships that drained my energy. I said no to things that sounded good on paper, but didn't align with the direction I wanted to go. I was terrified. I felt guilty. I expected people to be disappointed, maybe even angry. But something incredible happened. The world didn't end. In fact, it got quieter. And that quiet, it gave me space. Space to breathe. Space to focus. Space to actually live instead of just existing. The funny thing about saying no is that it doesn't just protect your time, it protects your mental energy. That's the real currency. I started realizing that every time I said yes to something that wasn't right for me, I was giving away a piece of myself. It's like handing someone a dollar bill every time they ask for your attention or effort, even if you don't have enough in your account to spare. Funny thing is, once I started saying no with intention, every yes I gave became powerful. My commitments weren't draining anymore. They were aligned, energizing, and deeply meaningful. Saying no wasn't rejection. It was a way of honoring what truly mattered. There's a fascinating psychological concept called decision fatigue. It's the idea that the more decisions we make in a day, the more our ability to make good decisions declines. That's why people often default to unhealthy food choices or poor decisions at the end of a long day. It's also why, when we're overcommit, our judgment becomes clouded. We're not choosing anymore, we're reacting. So when I started saying no more often, I was actually preserving my ability to make the right decisions. I wasn't constantly drowning in obligations. I was choosing my priorities with intention. And that, my friends, is freedom. Now, there's an interesting debate in psychology about how saying no affects relationships. Some argue that setting boundaries and saying no can strengthen your relationships because it encourages mutual respect. Others worry that being too selective might lead to isolation or misunderstood intentions. But in my experience, saying no clearly and kindly is a mark of respect, not only for yourself but for others too. People can't read your mind, and they can't respect your boundaries if you don't enforce them. One of the most powerful shifts in my life came when I stopped worrying about how people would react to my no. The truth is, the people who respect you will understand. The people who don't respect your boundaries, they'll find a way to be upset no matter what you do. And that's a tough pill to swallow, but it's real. Here's the practical part. The next time you feel obligated to say yes, ask yourself, is this in alignment with what I truly want? Does this serve my long-term goals? Does this respect my need for time, space, and energy? If the answer is no, then say no. It doesn't make you selfish, it makes you smart. And if you're still struggling with guilt, because let's be real, we all do, here's a little hack. Try replacing the word no with not right now, or this isn't the best fit for me at the moment. It softens the blow for both you and the other person, but you're still asserting your boundaries. I also started practicing preemptive no's. If I knew I was about to get roped into something I didn't want to do, I'd just lay it out early. I'd love to help, but I'm already committed to something else. Setting the boundary in advance gives you the power to say no without feeling trapped or caught off guard. One last thing, saying no isn't about shutting the world out. It's about making space for what truly matters. It's about saying yes to your peace, your goals, your time with loved ones, your creative projects. It's about choosing yourself without guilt. Because, trust me, no one else will choose you for you. So, say no when you need to. Say it kindly. Say it clearly. And watch how your life transforms. Not because of what you let go, but because of what you make room for. One of the things that changed me the most was when I realized that true happiness isn't just something you wait for or hope will come someday. It's something you actively create. And the 11th habit that led to a deeper sense of fulfillment in my life was practicing mindfulness. Learning to fully inhabit the present moment without judgment or distraction. Now, if you've heard the term mindfulness, you might think it's all about sitting cross-legged in silence, chanting OM while sipping overpriced green tea. I get it. That's what I thought too. But mindfulness is much less about emptying your mind and much more about filling it. Filling it with presence, awareness, and a deep appreciation for what's happening right now. Let's take a moment to step back. We live in a world that's constantly pulling our attention in 100 different directions. Emails ping, phones buzz, social media never stops scrolling. Multitasking is practically a badge of honor. And yet, we find ourselves more distracted than ever. I realized that I wasn't actually living my life. I was just passing through it. When I thought about the big moments, vacations, birthdays, first dates, I remembered the highlights, but not the details. I didn't remember how the coffee tasted on that rainy afternoon I met my best friend, or how my grandmother's hands felt as she held mine when we talked about family stories. Those moments, they're gone now because I wasn't paying attention. I was too busy thinking about the next thing. That's when I decided to try mindfulness, not as a buzzword, but as a practice. I wasn't going to force myself into a Zen state. Spoiler, that's a myth. Instead, I started simply paying attention, without judgment or criticism, to whatever I was doing in the present moment. I began small. While eating, I focused on the taste of my food. I wasn't eating while checking my phone or watching TV. I just ate. And, let me tell you, that apple tasted like a revelation. The crunch, the sweetness, the slight tartness. It was like I'd never truly tasted an apple before. From there, I worked on practicing mindfulness during my walks, my work, even conversations. And slowly, I realized that the more I showed up for these moments, the more I began to appreciate them. Instead of waiting for the next big milestone to feel satisfied, I started finding joy in the everyday. The way the sun hit the sidewalk in a perfect angle, the sound of rain on the window, the feeling of soft socks after a long day. These were small, insignificant things that became everything when I allowed myself to fully experience them. By learning to say no deliberately, I discovered that my yes became more meaningful. No longer driven by guilt or habit, my choices reflected my priorities. Declining what didn't serve me gave space for what truly did. One study I found particularly fascinating showed that practicing mindfulness can actually change the structure of your brain. Neuroscientists discovered that mindfulness increases the gray matter in areas of the brain responsible for learning, memory, and emotional regulation. Essentially, mindfulness rewires your brain to handle stress better, to be more present, and to experience greater emotional balance. There's a curious side effect of mindfulness that I didn't see coming. It slows down time. Okay, I know that sounds like something out of a science fiction movie, but hear me out. The more I stayed present, the more I realized how many beautiful, fleeting moments I had been missing. Time didn't feel as rushed anymore. I found myself actually enjoying the ride, rather than always obsessing about the destination. An odd, almost comical, fact about mindfulness is that it has roots in practices that go back over 2,500 years. You'd think something so ancient might feel irrelevant, but in fact, mindfulness is making a major comeback in the modern world. And it's not just for meditation practitioners or spiritual gurus. It's being used to treat anxiety, depression, and even chronic pain. The world has finally caught on to something the Buddha was saying all along. When you realize nothing is lacking, the whole world belongs to you. The interesting thing about mindfulness is that it can be practiced anytime, anywhere. You don't need a retreat or hours of quiet. You just need to take a pause, a breath. Whether you're waiting in line at the grocery store or stuck in traffic, you can choose to bring your attention back to what's happening right now, without judgment. It sounds deceptively simple, but the more I practiced, the more I noticed that it allowed me to choose how I responded to each moment. And this is where mindfulness meets productivity. You'd think that being more mindful would make me less efficient or productive. But in fact, it's had the opposite effect. Because I'm more focused, I get more done in less time. I stop wasting energy on distractions. I'm more patient with myself, and as a result, I'm more productive without the usual stress and mental clutter. Now, there's a debate in psychology about whether mindfulness is the ultimate solution for everything. Some people argue that mindfulness has been marketed as a cure-all, and it's important to acknowledge that it doesn't fix everything. You can't meditate your way out of real-world problems. But I'd argue that it gives you the tools to approach those problems with more clarity and emotional stability. You become less overwhelmed, less reactive. You become more grounded. For example, I used to let my emotions run the show. Stressful day at work? Panic mode. Small mistake on a project? Instant self-criticism. Now, I sit with those feelings instead of spiraling. I can still be frustrated or anxious, but I don't become frustration or anxiety. I just observe it. And that small shift, observing my thoughts instead of becoming them, has been one of the most powerful changes I've experienced. So, if you're thinking about giving mindfulness a shot, don't wait for the perfect moment. Start small. Start with your breath, your next meal, or even your next conversation. Notice what's happening right now, without judgment, without a timeline, and let yourself be there. Let life be enough in that moment, without needing to change it or fix it. Because here's the thing. Life is happening now, not in the past, not in the future, right now. And mindfulness gives you the gift of fully experiencing it. When I first heard about the idea of creating a morning routine, I laughed. It sounded like something out of a self-help infomercial, like I was supposed to wake up at 5 a.m., make a green juice, and then meditate for an hour while the sun rose. Who had time for that? Not me. Mornings were a scramble. Hit snooze, rush through my shower, check my phone, and hope for the best. But as life got busier, I realized that I needed structure. I needed consistency. And that's when I started creating a morning routine that worked for me. A routine that wasn't about perfection or Pinterest-worthy moments, but about creating a foundation for the rest of the day. The 12th habit that transformed my life was learning how to craft a morning routine that set the tone for everything else. At first, I was skeptical. I tried a few morning rituals that I saw on YouTube and Instagram. The problem? They didn't fit me. I tried waking up at 5 a.m. to read and journal for an hour. That's cute, but it was also ridiculous. I'm not a 5 a.m. club kind of person. I love my bed. I value my sleep. So I started with the basics, then built on it slowly. No pressure, no judgment, just what felt right. I learned that the best morning routine isn't one that someone else prescribes for you. It's the one that works for your personality, your needs, and your schedule. For me, the biggest revelation was that mornings don't have to be productive, they just need to be intentional. My morning routine became a ritual, something that grounded me in the chaos of the day ahead. I started with a simple, no phone for the first 30 minutes. This was a game changer. I didn't wake up to the demands of emails, texts, or social media. Instead, I gave myself permission to ease into the day, even if it meant just sitting quietly for a few minutes. I'll admit, the first few days were weird. I was used to reaching for my phone immediately, checking my email, scrolling through my social media. But when I stopped doing that, I started noticing things. I noticed the way the morning light streamed through my window. I noticed how my body felt after a night's rest. I noticed my breath, the simple act of just breathing. It's strange how much you miss when you're in constant motion. Oddly enough, it was during this time of no phone that I started to feel the smallest shifts. I began to feel more connected to myself, and less like I was just reacting to life's notifications. My routine grew into something personal. A cup of hot water with lemon first thing. A few minutes of stretching, writing 3 things I was grateful for. And then, if I had time, reading a chapter from a book that inspired me. But the key here wasn't what I did. It was that I did it. I showed up for myself first thing in the morning, before the world could demand anything from me. That space, that quiet moment, became my anchor. I started realizing that a morning routine isn't just about setting the tone for the day. It's about taking control of your time. When you take control of your mornings, you're setting the stage for a day where you're the one calling the shots, not your to-do list. Now, I know what you're thinking, but I don't have time for all that. And that's fair. You don't have to follow someone else's morning routine. If you only have 10 minutes, make them count. Do one thing that grounds you. Maybe it's a hot cup of coffee and a quiet moment. Maybe it's stretching for 3 minutes before you get up. The key is consistency, not perfection. One of the most interesting debates around morning routines is whether they actually improve productivity and well-being, or if they're just another trend. Some studies say that having a morning routine can help reduce stress and improve focus. It's about starting your day on your terms, instead of reacting to the chaos that life throws at you. But other researchers argue that the obsession with perfecting mornings is just another way to add pressure to your already full life. They say that the pursuit of the perfect morning can cause unnecessary stress, especially if it's not realistic for your lifestyle. But here's my take. It's not about perfection. It's about intention. A good morning routine doesn't need to look like a meditation retreat. It just needs to be something that serves you. The act of creating a routine that fits your life gives you control. And if you don't feel like it's working after a week or two, adjust. Your morning routine isn't a rule book. It's a set of tools that helps you build the day you want. I remember a time when mornings were the hardest part of my day. I woke up already stressed, already behind. But when I started to take time to choose my actions in the morning, I started to take back my day. I became less reactive and more proactive. I felt better, not because the morning routine was magical, but because I showed up for myself. I also realized that your morning routine doesn't have to be long or complicated. Some days, it's just a quick 5-minute breathing exercise or writing one thing I'm grateful for. On days when I need more time, I'll add in a longer stretch or a few extra minutes of reading. But the consistency, that commitment to showing up every morning, that's what really makes a difference. Here's my morning routine in a nutshell. 1. No phone for the first 30 minutes. Just me and my coffee. 2. Drink a glass of water with lemon. 3. Write 3 things I'm grateful for. 4. Move for 5 minutes, whether it's stretching or a short walk. 5. Read a chapter of something that inspires me. It's simple, but it works. When you start your day with intention, you start living with intention. It's not about forcing yourself into some ideal routine. It's about choosing one thing that brings you peace and making it your own. No rules, just consistency. So, if you're thinking about starting a morning routine, try this. Don't overthink it. Start small. Choose something simple that makes you feel like you've won your first victory of the day. Let that be the anchor that carries you through everything else. And when you look back at your morning a few months from now, you'll realize it wasn't about the perfect morning. It was about starting your day in a way that truly served you. When I first heard the phrase, "get comfortable with discomfort," I thought it was some motivational nonsense. Seriously, who wants to be uncomfortable? But as I started to push myself beyond what felt easy and familiar, I realized that the 13th habit that changed me forever wasn't just about embracing discomfort. It was about learning to grow through it. The discomfort wasn't the problem. It was the gateway to everything I wanted. The idea of getting comfortable with discomfort isn't about seeking out pain or challenging situations just for the sake of it. It's about accepting discomfort as part of the process of becoming better, stronger, and more resilient. It's the feeling you get when you're outside your comfort zone, the lump in your throat before you take a leap, the sweaty palms before you make a big decision. Those feelings are normal, and more importantly, they are essential for growth. I used to shy away from discomfort. I avoided the hard conversations, skipped the tough workouts, and procrastinated on the projects that felt too overwhelming. I convinced myself that if something was difficult or uncomfortable, it was a sign I should avoid it. But eventually, I came to realize that the most rewarding experiences in life, the ones that shaped me, challenged me, and taught me the most, came when I pushed through that discomfort. Let me take you back to a moment in my life when discomfort became my teacher. A few years ago, I started a new job in a field that was completely foreign to me. I was excited, yes, but also terrified. I didn't know the industry, the lingo, or the people. Every single day felt like I was walking into a room full of strangers who already knew everything, and I was struggling just to keep up. I felt stupid. I felt out of place. And every time I made a mistake, I wanted to crawl under my desk and disappear. But instead of retreating, I kept showing up. I kept pushing myself into situations that made me anxious. I asked questions, even when I was sure they'd be dumb. I stayed late, even when my brain was telling me to run for the hills. I made so many mistakes. But over time, something shifted. I stopped avoiding the discomfort. I started using it as a signal that I was learning, growing, and becoming better. That's when I realized discomfort isn't a sign to stop, it's a sign to keep going. And it's not just in work or new experiences. It's in every part of life. The discomfort of telling someone how you really feel. The discomfort of making a tough decision, even when it might disappoint others. The discomfort of standing up for yourself or saying no when it's hard. These are the moments where growth happens. One of the strangest things I learned is that the more you embrace discomfort, the less uncomfortable it becomes. At first, stepping out of my comfort zone felt like I was trying to squeeze into shoes that were too small. But as I kept walking in them, I realized they weren't so tight after all. The longer I faced discomfort, the more I learned to trust myself through it. The fear, the uncertainty, the doubt, they became part of the process, not something to fear. In some cultures, the discomfort of cold water is embraced through practices like cold plunges or ice baths. It's considered a way to build resilience, increase circulation, and even boost mood. People willingly dive into ice-cold lakes or take freezing showers as a way to condition their bodies and minds to handle stress. It sounds wild, but the principle is simple. By intentionally subjecting yourself to discomfort, you train yourself to handle more of it with less resistance. But here's the thing. Discomfort is relative. What's uncomfortable for one person might feel like second nature to someone else. And that's why it's so personal. Getting comfortable with discomfort doesn't mean pushing yourself to extremes. It means understanding where your personal growth lies and having the courage to face it head-on. When discomfort hits hard, I ground myself with one simple question. What's the worst-case scenario? And truthfully, it's rarely as scary as it seems. At most, I might feel embarrassed or inconvenienced, but I'll get through it. And every time I do, I build more resilience. One time, I had to give a presentation at work. I was terrified. My stomach was in knots, my palms were sweaty, and my mind kept telling me, "You're going to mess this up." But I showed up anyway. I delivered the presentation. And yes, I stumbled over my words a few times. Yes, I felt awkward. But when it was over, I felt alive. That discomfort, it was worth it. Because with each experience like that, I started building a mental muscle that made it easier the next time. And here's where it gets interesting. It's not just about facing discomfort in external situations. It's also about confronting the discomfort inside of us. The negative self-talk, the imposter syndrome, the fears and doubts that tell us we're not enough. Those inner voices are just as important to face as any external challenge. I realized that when I felt that discomfort, it was often a sign I was about to break through something. A limiting belief, a fear I had been holding on to, a self-imposed boundary. The more I leaned into that discomfort, the more I discovered new layers of myself. The more I realized that the things I had been avoiding were actually the things that were going to propel me forward. One of the biggest shifts for me was understanding that discomfort doesn't mean I'm doing something wrong. It means I'm doing something right. Every time I feel that pang of fear or discomfort, I know I'm on the brink of growth. It's like a signal that I'm pushing past my limits and expanding into new territory. And that, more than anything else, is where the magic happens. So, if you're standing at the edge of something uncomfortable right now, whether it's a new job, a tough conversation, or a personal challenge, don't back down. Lean into it. Embrace it. Because on the other side of that discomfort is your growth, your strength, and a version of yourself you've never met. Remember, the discomfort you feel today is the resilience you'll have tomorrow. And the more you embrace it, the less it controls you. I'm going to be real with you. I've spent a lot of my life chasing perfection. I thought that if I could just nail the perfect diet, the perfect job, the perfect relationship, then everything would click. I'd be good enough, happy, and completely at peace with myself. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. No matter how hard I tried to get everything just right, something always felt off. And then I learned the 14th habit that would change me forever, letting go of perfection. Not just in a relax, everything's fine kind of way, but in the deep, powerful realization that perfection is not the goal. Imperfection is. Let's be honest, perfection is a trap. It's a moving target. One minute you're almost there, and the next minute, you've set a new, impossible standard to chase. And the thing is, when you're focused on being perfect, you miss out on what really matters. The journey, the messiness, the mistakes, and the growth. For a long time, I avoided taking risks because I wanted everything to be flawless. I would plan, research, and tweak until I felt like I couldn't possibly improve anymore. And then, I'd freeze. Because nothing was ever good enough to release or share with the world. This perfectionism bled into every part of my life. Writing a blog post? I'd rewrite it 50 times. Starting a new project? I'd obsess over every detail until I became paralyzed with indecision. Even my relationships suffered because I was afraid of being imperfect or being perceived as flawed. But eventually, something clicked. One day, I was talking to a friend who said something so simple, yet so powerful. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be real. That's when I realized that perfection isn't about getting everything right. It's about being authentic, allowing yourself to show up as you are, flaws and all. Perfectionism holds you back. Authenticity propels you forward. An interesting fact about perfectionism is that it's rooted in fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of not being enough. The funny thing is, the more you try to avoid failure, the more you fear it. And when you're paralyzed by perfectionism, you miss out on the opportunities to learn from your failures. This was a huge turning point for me. I stopped trying to get everything perfect and started focusing on progress instead. It was a shift in mindset, but it changed everything. I remember releasing my first video online. I was terrified. It wasn't perfect. The lighting was off. My voice wavered a little. I missed a couple of key points. But you know what? It didn't matter. The people who watched it didn't care about the tiny imperfections. They cared about what I had to say. They saw me, flaws and all, and that connection made it worth it. Since then, I've learned that imperfection is what makes us human. It's what makes our stories real and relatable. It's what allows us to connect with others on a deeper level. No one wants to hear from someone who's got it all together all the time. We want to hear from people who are willing to be honest, messy, and imperfect. Now, instead of striving for perfection, I focus on improvement. Every time I fail or make a mistake, I ask myself, what can I learn from this? I no longer see mistakes as failures. I see them as opportunities for growth. The more I embrace imperfection, the more I've learned to love the process, not just the outcome. And here's the wild thing. When you stop chasing perfection, you actually get better faster. Why? Because you're no longer afraid to try. You're not afraid to take risks. You're not afraid to fail. And as a result, you end up learning and improving at a much quicker rate than if you were waiting for everything to be just right. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we should settle for mediocrity. There's a big difference between aiming for improvement and settling for good enough. But what I am saying is that we don't need to be perfect to be effective. You don't have to have every detail in place to move forward. You just have to take action. Discomfort doesn't scare me like it used to. I ask myself, what's the worst-case scenario? And honestly, it's rarely worth the anxiety. A little awkwardness? Some inconvenience? I can handle that. Every time I face the fear, I add another layer to my resilience. But let's be clear, letting go of perfection doesn't mean lowering your standards. It means recognizing that your standards don't have to be impossible. It means accepting that mistakes are a natural part of the process and that they don't define your worth. It means being gentle with yourself when things don't go as planned. For example, I used to believe that in order to be successful, I had to accomplish everything perfectly the first time. But now, I understand that success is built on trial and error. The more I fail, the more I learn. The more I learn, the closer I get to reaching my goals. It's not about getting it right on the first try. It's about getting it right through persistence, consistency, and imperfect action. The other piece of this puzzle is learning to be kinder to yourself. Perfectionism often comes with a heavy dose of self-criticism. But when you start accepting your imperfections, you begin to treat yourself with more compassion. You start to see mistakes as stepping stones, not roadblocks. The more I embraced imperfection, the more I started enjoying life for what it was. I stopped obsessing over every detail and started savoring the moments. Life became less about achieving perfection and more about enjoying the ride. The little imperfections, like the mess in the kitchen after cooking a new recipe or the mistakes I make during presentations, are what make life beautiful. They are the proof that we are human, that we are trying, that we are living. So, if you're caught in the trap of perfectionism, I encourage you to let go. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to be flawless. What matters is that you show up, keep learning, and keep growing. Because, in the end, perfection is an illusion. What matters is progress. What matters is the journey. And when you embrace imperfection, you open yourself up to a life of possibility, growth, and connection, one that's real, messy, and beautiful. At some point in life, we all start thinking about what we've achieved. We measure success through promotions, awards, material wealth, and accomplishments. But what happens when you've achieved everything on paper, and yet, something still feels missing? The last habit that transformed my life was one that I didn't even know I needed: giving back to the community. At first, I didn't understand how giving could actually change me. I always thought that generosity was about helping others, but what I didn't realize was how deeply it would help me, too. It's not just about donating money or volunteering time. It's about contributing to something greater than yourself, about investing in people, and about making the world a little better, even if it's just one small act at a time. It started when I realized that no matter how much I achieved, there was always an emptiness that didn't seem to go away. The career victories felt fleeting. The new things I bought lost their appeal quickly. I kept looking for happiness outside of myself, thinking it was something that would come from success, from doing things for me, from focusing only on my own life. But then, I got involved with a charity event in my community. Nothing extravagant, just a small group working together to provide food and supplies for those in need. The moment I started helping, I felt a shift in myself. There was a kind of humility I hadn't experienced before, a sense that I was part of something bigger. And the more I gave, the more I realized that the act of giving wasn't just about the people I was helping. It was about me, too. It filled a part of me that I didn't even know was empty. At that moment, I began to understand something I hadn't before. Giving wasn't a selfless act. It was a partnership. It was about creating connection, strengthening community, and finding purpose. It was about having an impact, no matter how small, on someone else's life. Surprisingly, science says that helping others makes you happier. Giving doesn't just benefit the receiver, it uplifts the giver too. Research shows it can reduce stress, boost your well-being, and even improve your health. Volunteers, in particular, tend to be not only happier, but also healthier and longer-lived. Turns out, kindness is a form of self-care. But I didn't just stop at charity events. I realized that giving back could take so many forms, whether it was mentoring someone, sharing knowledge, or simply offering emotional support to a friend who needed it. It became about being present for people, offering kindness without expecting anything in return. That's when the shift happened. The more I gave, the more I realized how much richer my life became. One of the most profound lessons I learned was that giving isn't about what you give, but how you give it. Sure, donations and volunteering are great, but what about the little things we do every day? Holding the door open for someone, offering a smile to a stranger, taking the time to listen when someone needs to talk. These small, Everyday acts of kindness create a ripple effect that goes beyond what we can measure. There's an interesting concept called the helper's high. It's that feeling you get after doing something nice for someone else. It's a kind of rush, almost like a natural high, brought on by releasing endorphins. It's one of the reasons why helping others feels so good. It's an immediate reward for your efforts. But beyond that, giving also has a longer-term impact on your sense of purpose and your connection to the world around you. For me, giving back also meant learning to appreciate the things I had. It made me realize how much I take for granted and how little I truly need to be content. Helping others taught me to see beyond my own desires, to look at the world with more empathy, and to appreciate the gifts in my life. But the most profound thing I learned through giving is that we're all interconnected. No matter how isolated we might feel, we're all part of a larger web, constantly influencing each other. The more we contribute to that web, the stronger it becomes. Now, I've made giving a part of my daily life, not just through big events, but through the small, everyday actions. Whether it's a word of encouragement, lending a hand, or simply being there for someone who needs it, I've learned that giving isn't just an act, it's a way of living. It's the antidote to the loneliness and isolation we often feel in a world that's constantly telling us to focus on ourselves. So, if you're feeling stuck or disconnected, consider finding ways to give back. It doesn't have to be huge. It could be as simple as listening to someone who needs to talk, offering your time to a cause that matters to you, or even sending a message to someone you care about just to say you're thinking of them. The act of giving has the power to transform not just the people you help, but also yourself. Giving back isn't just about the impact you have on others, it's about the impact it has on you. It rewires your brain, shifts your perspective, and gives you a deeper sense of fulfillment that no material possession or achievement can provide. And ultimately, that's what life is about, connection. We're all in this together, and the more we lift each other up, the more we all rise. So, if there's one thing I'd encourage you to do, it's this: give. Give your time. Give your energy. Give your love. Give your knowledge. Whatever it is, give. And watch how your life transforms in ways you never expected.